What's up? I'm John Ricard. This is Camera Work Podcast. Now, if you've ever listened to me do this podcast, you've probably heard me mention the Stephen Pressfield book called The War of Art. And if you've never read the book, please turn off the podcast right now because I'm going to kind of spoil the book. Even though, my 2-minute summary of the book, so to speak, isn't really going to ruin the book, but because the book is so good, there's no way I can ruin it. And I can't even do it justice explaining it. But I do just want to share my connection to something that happened to me today with what I read in the book. But really, if you haven't read the book, please just shut this off. We don't need the views. Go read the book for real. But if you have read the book, what the book talks about is the difference between a professional and an amateur. And he says the real difference is that a professional approaches the art like a job. They just go in and put in the 8 hours every single day. They don't worry about the outcome. They don't worry about something that he calls resistance. In the same way that a sanitation worker gets out there every single day and picks up the garbage, and he doesn't say, hey, this makes no sense. I pick up the garbage and I come back on Wednesday and all the garbage is back again. This is stupid. He just goes out there and picks up the garbage every day. The cops get out there every single day and try to fight crime, and the crime rate never goes down. But they just keep going through. They don't second guess and question it. That's what a professional should do with their art. And here's one of the more interesting things, too, in the book. He says, if you do that, the muse, the angel, will just come down and help you. And it's such a, spiritual, fancy, mystical type of concept or whatever. Not usually the kind of thing that I'm into, but I love the book, so I bought into it and had an experience like that today. Very minor, but I just want to share it with you, okay? So I was inspired, so I do a 365 project. So every day I try to take a photograph and post it. That's a rather complicated thing, more complicated than it sounds. I'll probably do a podcast on that at some point. But sometimes what I'll do is I'll just take a picture of my family, and I know I don't want to post that picture, so I'll just post a picture from my archives. But a lot of days I do try to get out there and actually take a photo. If I don't have a client job, I'll just get out there and ride the subway or walk around a little bit for a couple of minutes and try to find a photo. Now, I would like to be able to approach strangers and say, hey, do you mind if I get a picture? And I do it fairly often, but it's kind of nerve-wracking. It's harder mentally than you would think to just go up to a stranger and ask if I can take a picture. But again, I do it fairly often. Some days, though, I just can't get the gumption, whatever the word is. I just can't make myself do it. I'm just like, no, they're going to say no, and I don't want to do it. I don't want to get into that zone where I'm asking people for permission to take a photo. And that's what happened today. I walked around my local train station for quite a while, 10, 15 minutes, trying to find someone to take a picture of. I just couldn't find anyone, and it was no one that I wanted to approach. So I kind of gave up. I said, all right, I'll just take a picture of me, which is not my favorite subject, but I'm just trying to create an original picture for the 365 project. So there's this little alleyway with this stained glass, broken little mirrors. So I'm going to take a picture of myself in the reflection of the mirror. Now it's tricky because I'm using a Leica M9 for this, and what you see through the lens doesn't exactly match what the sensor is capturing. It's a mirrorless camera, but it doesn't work like your mirrorless camera where what you see is what you get. It doesn't work like that on a Leica. So I'm trying to get my eye to show up in one of the little mirrors, and I'm trying to focus on it. I kind of get my eye to show up in the mirror, but the exposure is wrong. So I'm trying to adjust the exposure. I'm darkening the exposure. I'm trying to work on the focus, and I'm not shooting with the camera to my eye. I'm just trying to aim and point it. So it's definitely a little bit tricky, but I finally nailed the shot. It's not a great photo, by the way. It's just, I nail it good enough that I'm about to say to myself, okay, I think I'm on to it. I have my 365 for the day. Let me go on home. But just as I get my eye framed and I get the exposure right, this girl just walks right into the frame of my camera and she says, take a picture of me, which was really funny because I had come out hoping to take a picture of a stranger. And here this girl just popped up and says, take a picture of me. And it's very odd. She didn't even say hi or anything like that, and I snapped the photo very quickly and realized that the light was completely wrong for her. So I asked her to move over into the shade. And I could see she was just kind of like a a restless person, very spontaneous. I was afraid she was going to leave quickly. So I'm thinking to myself, let me just nail this picture right away. So the first one I did, which was just a light check, I knew it was going to be too dark when I moved her into the shade where the light would be more even. So I just immediately dialed the ISO higher. I had been at 160 and I moved it up to 800 and just took a guess on the aperture. Sure enough, I nailed the exposure perfectly just from the guess. Not that it matters. Shooting raw, you can get 2 or 3 stops back. Doesn't really matter. But I did nail it, and I did just a couple of shots. I could see she wasn't interested in having me pose her and she wasn't going to stay long. But at one point she turned sideways and she looked down, which I always love pictures where people look sad. I don't know why, but I like that sometimes better than the eye contact. And I thought to myself, I'm like, that's the shot. So I said something to her like, yeah, you look great there, or you look gorgeous there right now. So I say that to people often when I'm shooting them. And she smiled and gave me a really natural smile, which didn't end up being a great shot, the smiling shot. But it's just interesting how when you give someone that compliment, you really do get that really natural smile. And the funny thing is when she smiled, then she turned to face me, at which point I was ready to take that picture with the natural smile of her looking at the camera, but I had already hit the buffer on the M9. I mean, you get about 5 to 7 shots. I don't even know if it's 7. It might be 5. And, you know, you're locked out from taking pictures for a few seconds. And at that point, I knew she was going to go. So I just thanked her. And that was that. But it's a minor story. But the point of the story is just exactly what the book said would happen is what happened on that occasion. Meaning, I put in the work. I went out to this train station and I spent my 15 or 20 minutes looking for a photo. And when I could not get the photo, I didn't get discouraged. I just found a photo. I said, well, I'll take a picture of me. When I did that, the angel came down, the muse came down and just gave me a photo. Someone just popped up and said, take a picture of me, which is exactly what I wanted to do in the first place. So I just thought it was funny, just interesting little story there. So if you haven't read the book, it's The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield. I love the book. I tell everybody about it. It really had a profound impact on the way I work as an artist. And I meant to mention that I was inspired to go out there and do this stranger picture today by this really great video by Pierre T. Lambert, who did a video about how many pictures could he take in 10 minutes in Washington Square Park in New York. What a great video. He really shows what you can do if you just really have the right mindset. And I've used that approach. I've never done nearly as many pictures as he's done, but I've used that approach he does, this type of high energy approach and just really approaching people and really just very excitedly asking them to take their picture. And I've gotten compliance from people and been able to take the picture, but somehow it's not something that I like to do all the time. It's a real mental workout for me, and I don't do it all the time, but it is a great technique. It's a great video, but I watched that yesterday, and I was like, tomorrow I'm going to go out and get a picture. But then I went out and didn't really do it, but fortunately, like Stephen Pressfield said, the angels came down and just gave me a photo, and it all worked out great. All right. Anyway, thanks for listening. We'll see you guys soon.